Tensions between Ukraine and Russia have become the latest flashpoint between the Western alliance and Moscow, with the threat of war looming large over Eastern Europe. Just a short while ago, Ukraine's Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba called on Russia to withdraw its troops and instead turn to the negotiating table to address its concerns. Listen in.
I want to reiterate, Ukraine calls on Russia to withdraw the troops it amassed near our border, bring them back to their bases, stop intimidating Ukraine and the wider Euro-Atlantic community, and address all issues at the negotiating table only. Here, I would like to specifically stress that Ukraine and our partners, including the United States, have no difference in assessing risks of current Russian escalation. The tone of voice of our messages may sound different, but the actual assessment is the same. Everything is possible, and we should be preparing for every possible scenario. We didn't know what the Russian leadership is up to. We don't know what the Russian leadership is up to, but we worked tirelessly with partners to ensure unity of the broad international coalition in support of Ukraine, in order to reduce security risks and implement strong deterrence measures. The goal is to let Russian leadership soberly understand that any military adventures are not worth their price. I want to stress that Russia uses not only military force to pressure Ukraine, it also invests heavily in destabilizing our country from within. This includes disinformation, cyber attacks, fake bomb threats, attempts to sow distrust and foment popular unrest, attempts to divide Ukraine and its partners. Russian threats already harm our economy. The government of Ukraine is focused on maintaining financial and economic stability. In fact, we ended 2021 with a record economic indicators, highest GDP in 3 decades.
Now, for more on this, we are now being joined by our principal diplomatic correspondent, Siddhant Sibil. Siddhant, thanks so much for joining us. Now, we are given to understand that the Ukraine foreign minister essentially has called on India to appeal to Russia to step back from this crisis and this conflict. What more can you tell us about this?
Well, it was a press conference which was there for the global audience, and WION was present in that press conference. So in response to a WION question on where does Ukraine sees India's role, he basically said that he would like that India conveys to Russia that the aggression should not happen. We know that the troops are amassed at the border, and everyone knows the close relationship India has with Moscow. In fact, the question was that India has close relationship with Ukraine, Russia, and with United States. So the role India can play. We know that recently, on Monday, we saw the UNSC discussing the matter. India, of course, abstaining from the procedural vote, and of course, in the national statement, the Indian envoy to United Nations talking about how there should be dialogue, and of course recalled about the Minsk package, and of course the Normandy talks as well. He also mentioned about the 20,000 Indians who are there. He said that there is no need to worry.
Right, Siddhant, thanks so much for those inputs. We now cut across to a Pentagon briefing where the spokesperson John Kirby is presenting his remarks on the latest tensions.
Nothing precludes the United States from making its own decisions on forced movements, including those forces that are being placed on heightened readiness. That said, any movement of U.S. forces involves consultation with the host nation, as we have done with Romania and Poland and Germany prior to today's announcements. And we're mindful of the competing needs of operational security and our obligation to be transparent, and we'll provide you additional information on these and other movements as available and as appropriate. As we have long said, we are continuously reviewing our posture, so there may soon be additional posture decisions to announce, including movements that are part of ongoing military exercises. This is not the sum total of the deterrence actions we will take or those to reassure our allies. I think it won't surprise you, we take a theater-wide approach to deterrence and defense, and we welcome the additional announcements by Spain, Denmark, the UK, and the Netherlands of their consideration to deploy additional forces to reinforce NATO's eastern flank. The United States has robust capabilities distributed across Europe, including in the Baltic region, and we will continue to assess needs in that area in cooperation with the relevant allies and, of course, the full NATO alliance. We stand united. We have said that repeatedly. We say it again today. These movements are unmistakable signals to the world that we stand ready to reassure our NATO allies and deter and defend against any aggression. Now, as the Secretary said Friday, we do not know if Russia has made a final decision to further invade Ukraine, but it clearly has that capability. The Department of Defense will continue to support diplomatic efforts led by the White House and the State Department to press for resolution. We do not believe conflict is inevitable. The United States, in lockstep with our allies and partners, has offered Russia a path to de-escalate. But we will take all prudent measures to assure our own security and that of our allies. Now, finally, just one note. I note that in the past few hours, a proposal made by the United States leaked to a European news outlet. We did not make this document public. But now that it is, it confirms to the entire world what we have always been saying. There is no daylight between our public statements and our private discussions. NATO and its partners are unified in their resolve and open to constructive and serious diplomacy. The United States has gone the extra mile to find a diplomatic solution. And if Russia actually wants to negotiate a solution, as it claims it does, this document certainly makes clear that there is a path forward to do so. And with that, we'll take questions, starting with you, Lita.
Hi, John. Thanks. Just a couple details on some of this. Is it still 8,500 total that are on prepared to deploy orders, or are there additional ones? And there's a brigade at Fort Carson that already is scheduled to rotate into Europe. Are you including them? There's been some confusion. Are you including that Carson brigade in the prepared to deploy orders, or are they completely separate because they're an already scheduled deployment? And then one other, are there more, are these troops that are going, are they under NATO, or are these all unilateral U.S. moves? Thank you.
Let me see if I can remember all those. The troops that I'm talking about today will be going under U.S. command. But as I said, in the case of Romania, we know the French are going to be preparing to deploy troops there. We will find ways to complement that force presence, again, in full consultation with Romania. So I wouldn't describe these as unilateral moves. I mean, this is a bilateral arrangement between the United States and Romania. But to your question, they will be going under U.S. command. The 8,500, they still remain on prepare to deploy orders. As I said, when I talked about it last Monday, the vast majority of them are designed for the NATO response force. As I said in my opening statement, that force has not been activated, so they aren't going anywhere. The Secretary has, as you might imagine, as we have worked towards these troop movements, there have been additional forces put on prepare to deploy orders or shortened tethers. I'm not prepared to go into great detail today about that, but yes, there have been additional ones. And as I said in my opening statement, you can expect that could continue to happen going forward. We're going to constantly look at the conditions in the region and consult with allies and partners. And if we feel we need to make additional forces more ready, we'll do that. If we feel that we need to send more forces to certain eastern flank countries, we'll do that too, in full consultation with NATO and in full consultation with the specific allies and partners. And I think I missed one of your questions, Lita.
Well, I just want to clarify.
I'm going to have to take that one, Lita, because I don't have the breakdown of every single unit in that original 8,500 in front of me. So let me just take that rather than speculate and guess. Jen?
John, do you have any evidence that Putin plans to move beyond Ukraine's borders? Why are you bolstering these eastern flank allies if you do not have evidence of that?
Because it's important that we send a strong signal to Mr. Putin and, frankly, to the world that NATO matters to the United States. It matters to our allies. And we have ironclad Article 5 commitments. An attack on one is an attack on all. And so we know that that he also bristles at NATO, about NATO. And he has made no secret of that. We are making it clear that we're going to be prepared to defend our NATO allies if it comes to that. Hopefully it won't come to that. Nobody wants to see, as I said, conflict's not inevitable. There's no reason for there to be armed conflict in Ukraine or anywhere else on the European continent. And Mr. Putin can go a long way to serving that end by taking seriously the proposals that we have put forward diplomatically and by de-escalating through moving some of those troops away.
But is there any evidence that he plans to, that anything you're seeing that suggests those troops that are outside Ukraine might carry on to Poland, Romania?
What we see, Jen, is clear evidence every day that he continues to destabilize the environment by adding more forces into the western part of his country and along Belarus, in addition to additional naval activity in the Mediterranean and the North Atlantic. So he clearly is providing himself many options, lots more capabilities. For exactly what purpose, we don't know right now. And because we don't know exactly what his purpose is, we want to make sure we're ready on the NATO front to defend our allies. Barbara.
I want to follow up on Jen's question. You said at the beginning, the current situation demands we reinforce. So what specifically demands the reinforcement that you are laying out today? And the reason I ask this, this is bilateral, as you said. Originally, you spoke at length several days ago about the NATO response force. They have not activated that. You are moving ahead bilaterally, not under a NATO umbrella anyhow. So what signal does that send that you're not waiting for a NATO vote? And what is the current situation that demands this reinforcement outside of Russia, outside of Ukraine? I don't think I heard a specific answer.
I think the signal it sends that we're moving additional U.S. forces into Allied territory at the request and with the invitation of those countries is that we take our NATO commitments very, very seriously. And I put that right in the opening statement. And as for, I think your question is sort of why now?
Why are you doing? I don't understand. I'd like an explanation why you're doing this now without the vote at NATO, which does not appear readily apparent, for them to activate the response force. What has led you to say, okay, the United States will act on a bilateral basis? You have the invitations. You could have waited for a NATO vote. You decided not to. So what is the
it's not just us, Barb, other nations. And I mentioned Denmark, the UK, France. I mean, other nations, other NATO nations are likewise discussing in bilateral ways with Eastern flank nations the addition of forces and capabilities to those nations. So it's not just the United States. It's other NATO allies that are doing this. And you talk about this vote thing. Let's be clear. What I think you're getting at is the NATO response force. That's a 40,000 person strong force that is designed for high readiness. And that is a decision that the alliance and only the alliance can make. We have a contribution to that. We have gotten those forces alerted to be ready to go if needed, and they still will be. We also can, if the president decides, as commander-in-chief, to take some of those alerted forces and move them in a bilateral arrangement as well, he can do that. As I said at the top, it's not like the alliance has a veto authority on any of those troops that were put on prepare to deploy. But in terms of why now, here's just a couple of factors. Mr. Putin continues to add forces, combined arms, offensive capabilities, even over just the last 24 hours. He continues to add in Western Russia and in Belarus, and again, as I said, in the Mediterranean and the North Atlantic. He has shown no signs of being interested or willing to de-escalate the tensions. And it's not just the United States that's noticed this. Our NATO allies have noticed this, and we have been in constant communication and consultation with them, and they have expressed their concerns. We have shared our perspectives on what we're seeing with them. They have shared their perspectives on what they're seeing with us. And as a result of these bilateral discussions, we are now prepared to make these moves. I say again, two things. These are temporary moves, not permanent deployments, not permanent basing. And two, we're not ruling out the possibility that there will be more coming up in future days and weeks.
So my last question. The bottom line here is you cannot, the United States, the Pentagon, the White House, you right now could not rule out the possibility that Putin could make a move outside of Ukraine into an East European country that's friendly with NATO, friendly with the U.S. and ally. You can't rule out that he's going to make an additional move beyond Ukraine.
We're not ruling anything in or out with this announcement, Barb. This isn't about making this. This isn't about an intel assessment about what Mr. Putin will or won't do. As I said again in my opening statement, we still don't believe he's made a decision to further invade Ukraine. And if he does further invade Ukraine, obviously there's going to be consequences for that. But he has many options and capabilities available to him as to how he might do that. And we simply don't know. We want to make sure that he knows any move on NATO is going to be resisted, and it's going to trigger Article 5, and we're going to be committed to the defense of our allies. And that's what this is all about. Yeah, David.
When President Biden previewed this last week, and he said he would be sending forces in the near term, he also said not a lot. Do you consider 3,000 not a lot, and how does 1,000 troops, infantry troops, stop the kind of force that you've been describing that Russia has been amassing in Western Russia and Belarus?
We think that these orders that the Secretary is giving today are very much in keeping with the President's comments. And to your other question, I remind again that we hold the option open of additional force movements if that's desired and needed. So the steps I'm talking about today could very well be preliminary steps to future ones that we might take. And to your other question about, is that enough? Again, I think it's worth reminding that Romania, as a sovereign state, has their own military, and a very capable one at that. And it's not just the United States sending a striker squadron. As I mentioned earlier, the French are going to be sending additional troops. I'll let them speak to what they're going to do and on what timeline and how much. And as I also said in my opening statement, other countries are likewise moving forward to provide bolstering capabilities to NATO allies on the eastern flank.
How long will it take these troops to get in position, and do you expect the infantry combat team from Fort Bragg to jump in?
I'm not going to talk about the specifics of their movement, but as I said in my opening statement, we expect them to start moving in coming days. I don't have a more specific timeline for you in terms of exact departure date and exact arrival. Obviously, it'll be obvious when they get there, and certainly we'll try to keep you informed all the way. Court.
I just want to say, you've made it clear several times that these troops won't be brought into Ukraine and that they won't be in combat. But can you rule out that any of these troops, specifically some from the 82nd Airborne, might be brought into Ukraine in the coming days to help with a non-combatant evacuation? Is that possible that they could be used for that?
As I think you heard the Secretary say on Friday, our troops are multi-mission capable, and they will be prepared for a range of contingencies, and I won't go any further than that.
Is that one reason, though, that the 82nd specifically was identified as one of the units to go forward early? Is that because of that capability, because they have the power?
They are, as you know, already a ready force. They are already at a heightened state of alert. That's the raison d'etre for that force, and they are multi-mission capable. They can do a lot of things. It's a very versatile force, and I think their versatility, their ability to move quickly, and to conduct a range of missions across a range of contingencies, which is well proven. That's the reason why the Secretary has ordered them to go. Okay. Let me get to, I promise I'll get to everybody, but I haven't done, other than Lita, I haven't done anybody on the phone, and I need to do that. Sylvie?
Hello, thank you. I would like to know how many soldiers you are going to send to Poland, because you said 2,000 from US to Germany and Poland. So how many soldiers will you have in Poland all in all?
The majority of the 2,000 that'll be moving from Fort Bragg will be going to Poland. The 18th Airborne Corps, as I said in my opening statement, that's going to Germany, that they are going to form a joint task force headquarters, and that's usually, depending on the need and the task at hand, several hundred people. So the majority of the 2,000 that I mentioned that comprise the 82nd Airborne Brigade Combat Team, that leading element, they'll be going to Poland. Kelly from News Nation.
That, of course, was the Pentagon spokesperson John Kirby delivering the latest remarks and the U.S. stance on the Russia-Ukraine tensions. Some of the remarks that stand out. The U.S. clearly said that it is reviewing postures as we speak, and that the U.S. currently stands ready to assure all the NATO allies, all of the U.S.'s NATO allies, that any aggression would be tackled. An obvious jibe at Russia. John Kirby also said that we don't know what Russia has planned for invasion of Ukraine, but that Russia has the full ability to do it. Some strong remarks there. Another significant statement coming from the Pentagon. It is important that we send a strong signal to Vladimir Putin that NATO matters to the United States. WION World is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news updates on the move.